November 5th, 2011, I attended Occupy Baltimore, which was today. I went down there because I had to get some type of voice documentation of an interview. We used as found dialogue from my theater class. But I already had curiosities and questions I had in my mind. So it was really interesting for me to go down there and actually interview people. And that was the first time I ever been part of a protest movement, so I felt really good to be a part of it. Me going into it without really knowing any of the information about it, I already had my preconceived judgments and stereotypes of what type of people were down there and what type of events were going on. But me being a part of the process and marching to the city hall and seeing how many good people were down there is really an inspiration to me as far as liberation. It already pisses me off the injustice in this society, and so many things are going on that people are scared to speak of because they don't want to be the one that like knocks over all the dominoes. But I see this event as really as a ripple effect in a river. It only takes one to start the wave and then continues on from there. And it's in so many states and cities now. It's not just Baltimore, it's Wall Street, California, and DC. There's so many other societies that's taken in, just trying to get the message out there. We are all equal, and there's nobody above us, and nobody should be put on a pedestal, because we are all. There's only one race. It's a human race. So I recorded and documented the whole event. Just part of a documentary. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed.
And spending the night here. Can you raise your hand if you've been down here since the beginning? Yeah. Nice. Thank you. Holding down the fort. Thank you. We appreciate that very much. My name is Julie Lewis. I'm a member of Be Heard, Baltimore Higher Education Alliance for Real Democracy. We are an affinity group with Occupy Baltimore. We actually began our group to support Occupy Baltimore. We are a group of students, faculty members, staffs, and administrators from local area colleges who support the Occupy movement and support higher education, and know that they are, one directly affects the other, and everyone is welcome to join us. There's a flyer going around a little bit about when our group meets. We meet at 6 p.m. here. We also have a Facebook group that you can ask to join us. Yeah, 6 p.m. on, not every night, yeah, 6 p.m. on Sundays. We'll be meeting here tomorrow at 6 p.m. We're here every week. So please come support Be Heard and definitely support Occupy. During this rally, I'm going to introduce different committees from Occupy Baltimore, and also introduce some nonprofit and community organizations that are working here in Baltimore. We want this to be a rally for the movement, but also be a call to get involved in whatever way you want, whatever speaks to you as a person. So there's going to be opportunities throughout the rally to do that. We also plan at the end of our speakers and our poets, we are all going to march to City Hall to deliver a letter that is going to demand that they support the Occupy movement, that they not cut off electricity, that they not threaten eviction, and that they certainly don't use any kind of police violence. That we support this movement, and we want to see this movement stay safe and continue. Nancy Murray is collecting signatures to put on that letter. So as it's coming around, please sign it so that when we march to deliver it, we have lots of signatures on that letter. Just very briefly, I just wanted to talk just a little bit about the Occupy movement. This is a global movement, and Baltimore is a part of this.
Absolutely.
One thing that the movement has addressed is economic injustices, economic disparity. is the growing economic disparity between the have and the have-nots. That's why they're the 99%. The 99% means that's most of us, and that the 99% is tired of a minority in our country controlling the money, controlling the power, and that this needs to end. And it's hard because when you don't have the money and the power, well, what are you going to do about it, right? Well, what you're going to do about it is you're going to take to the streets. And we've been given nothing in this country without taking to the streets to get it. So that's part of the global movement. Also, it's a leaderless movement, so that causes some confusion because people ask, well, what are you here for? Who are your leaders? We already have a leader system that's not working for us. So part of the movement is to use a consensus process of decision making so each individual voice weighs the same. And that is essential to the movement, that each voice weighs the same. And that decision making is horizontal. It is not top down. And that is part of the movement as well. Just a little bit about Be Heard. We Be Heard, as Be Heard, not as Occupy, but as Be Heard, we have a small but vital list of demands. Just so you know where we're coming from, we demand that human needs be put over corporate profit. We demand that corporate money be taken out of politics. That decisions like Citizens United, where corporations can give unlimited funds to a candidate, you have essentially already bought them, and that is not a democracy. We also demand that we end the war economy and that we fund education, health care, and social services. And Be Heard's final demand is that this society has jobs that provide a living wage for all, not having to hustle with 3 minimum wage jobs, pay for your education, pay for, you know, maybe even your child's education at the same time. That the jobs we have are decent jobs that provide, that are enough for us to have a good living without becoming debt slaves to the banks. So that's what Be Heard. Those are our demands. So this afternoon we have a variety of poets, of speakers. We have Mark Steiner with us. We have Kevin Zeese with us. So I'm going to be with you throughout the afternoon, but I'm going to stop talking now, and I would like to introduce our first poet. She's a founding member of Be Heard. Kim Jensen is a poet, professor, and author of 3 books, including her forthcoming collection of poems, The Only Thing That Matters. Kim has been active in leftist politics for several decades. She doesn't look it, but she has. Most particularly in the anti-war movement and the struggle for Palestinian liberation and self-determination. Kim Jensen.
Thanks, Julie. And thank you guys all for being here. Today I'm going to try and keep it under 10 minutes. I want to tell a couple stories, and I want to throw out a couple ideas, and then I'd like to read you a poem. I want to start out with 3 stories that have happened to me this semester. I teach English at the Community College of Baltimore County. I have 3 students that I'd like to tell you about. I have a student named David, who, when he started out the semester, he had lost his job. He had been evicted. He was living in his car with his girlfriend and her children the first week of classes. He was really trying to keep it together and stay in school, and he was a great student. Unfortunately, it was too much, and he ended up having to drop out. The second student that I want to mention is a man named Sonny, who works full-time at a liquor store, and the liquor store cannot afford to pay for health care benefits for him. And so Sonny has his wife is stricken with this disease called Crohn's syndrome, a very painful disease, and he has no health care, and she has no health care, and she has to suffer this debilitating, horrific disease with 0 treatment. The third student I'd like to mention is Tamia. She also lost her job 2 years ago. She's been trying to find a job for 2 years. She's been on unemployment. She decided, at least while she was on unemployment, that she was going to try and get that education that she always wanted to have and she never had a chance to get. So she enrolled at CCBC. And as the semester wore on, her unemployment was cut. She was under too many bills. She got evicted from her house, and she too had to drop out of school. These are 3 students of mine in one class. In one English 102 class, 3, and I'm sorry to say that they're not alone. So, and by the way, these are not pity stories. These are stories of the 99%. That's what the 99% is going through. So, meanwhile in America, right down the street in Washington, D.C., the CEO, Robert Stevens of Lockheed Martin, makes his annual CEO executive compensation amounts to $26 million a year. Okay? $26 million a year. And by the way, the CEO of Lockheed Martin is considered a productive member of society. Okay? No. I say that's a destructive member of society, because what do they make? It's one of the #1 biggest arms manufacturing corporations in the world, and those arms aren't used to defend America. They're using those weapons to drop them on people in Iraq and Afghanistan, Somalia, and Libya, destroying people's lives, creating widows, creating people who have just been destroyed. So this is a destructive economy. So, the total cost of wars in this country since 2001, how many of you guys know what the total cost was according to the National Priorities Project? So far and still running, the total cost has been $1.3 trillion. $1.3 trillion. And can I tell you how much our Baltimore amount is? Baltimore City taxpayers have paid $1.6 billion toward these illegal and immoral wars. Okay? That's $1.6 billion that could have been used better. Okay? So, meanwhile, can I say something else? Meanwhile, in the big city of Baltimore, in June, last June, my son is a senior at Baltimore School of the Arts. They had to let go 3 teachers at Baltimore School of the Arts. One of them, Kim Parr, was their only painting teacher, mind you. Baltimore School of the Arts had 1 painting teacher, fabulous teacher, the best teacher you can ever imagine, 27 years of service, that she got laid off. Okay? Horrible. And meanwhile, at that same time she was getting laid off, they were dumping bombs on Libya. Each Tomahawk missile that they dumped on Libya costs $600,000. That's 10 years. That's 10 teacher salaries for a whole year. 1 Tomahawk missile. Okay, so what's the connection here? In case we haven't gotten the connection here yet, all of that money that's being used for their priorities could be used for helping David stay in school and Sonny's wife have health care and Tamia stay in school and Kim Parr having a job. And that's why we're here. That's why we're here occupying. When I heard the Occupy movement started up, I was so excited because I thought, now we have an international movement to end these atrocities. No more are those people up there going to do what they want to do with us going quietly into that dark night. So we are here. We're going to keep going until we decide what's done with our funds and what's done with our taxes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to end with a poem I wrote a couple years ago. It's called Bail Me Out. We have fallen into the kingdom where all is mind, a silent hall of one-sided mirrors, and I wonder, why is there always a wall of men looking down at us, like guilt apostles, a pantheon of stony faces, bent on watching us wherever we go? They don't do a thing to lend a hand, but scrutinize, and like King Midas, everything they touch turns to a 24-karat mess. From the pits of this kingdom I say, don't write to your senators. Don't tie up the congressional phone lines, because the sky is not falling. The sky is not falling. It already fell a long time ago. Don't you know? That's why they're still smiling. When I was hungry, they didn't give me to eat. When I was sick, they didn't think to fund a national health care plan. And when I was lost in the dungeons of this American prison, they put the key on the windowsill of their private chambers and went on with the plunder. And I see them up there in their rafters, a Rushmore of pale faces. And so now, it's up to each one of us to change the direction of our gaze. This system is dead. Tear down this wall. Okay. I don't know who's next, so Julie will announce who's next. Thank you. Thank you guys all for being here. Please be heard.
For the future. Part of what brought me to the Occupy movement was during my senior year of undergrad, I did a fellowship which was basically to assist Baltimore County Public Schools. And I taught at a middle school called Deep Creek Middle, which is in Essex. That year I spent in that fellowship changed my life. I don't think most people are aware of just how bad public education has gotten in this country. In the school I taught in, 52% of the children were on free and reduced lunch because their parents were below the poverty line. There was no running water in that school because the pipes had become so corroded and the school had no money to fix it, so there was no running water in the school. Because of Baltimore County or Baltimore City's no holdback policy, and for those of you not familiar with that, it basically means that unless you're diagnosed with a serious mental condition by a doctor that inhibits your ability to learn, you are going to the next grade. It doesn't matter if you get straight F's, it doesn't matter if you get D's and F's, it doesn't matter if you only show up part of the time, you're going to the next grade. And the reason they do that is because if they held back the sheer volume of children that are failing, they would run out of money. So that is why education in this country has gone so far. As a result, in the middle school I taught in, I had 8th graders. We're trying to get them into pre-calculus. They don't know their basic times tables. They aren't ready for division, and they're still doing check marks. Yes, check marks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to do multiplication because nobody's taught them. They're very frustrated, rightfully so, and they can't progress. And so as a result, one of two things tend to happen. Either they sit quietly and don't interact and give up in frustration, or they become discipline cases because they are so frustrated. Part of what I want is to get people to understand that part of why schools are the way they are is because there's definitely a lack of involvement from the community directly in the schools, but I don't blame the parents. And the reason I don't is because many of them work 2 and 3 jobs. Many of them are reliant on public transportation. If the bus line stops at 9 and parent-teacher conferences go from 8 to 10, you can't make it to parent-teacher conferences. And that's all as a result of the corruption in corporations and in our government. The worse and worse things get for the middle class, the less and less interaction we have with our children, the worse and worse our schools get. One really uplifting thing I wanted everybody to know that's resulted from this movement is that this movement is changing the conversation in this country. It's not just about getting into a rally. If you go online, recently the Department of Education in New York, back in 2002 when Mayor Bloomberg came to power, he elected a new commission that kind of overtook the regular Department of Education and was then called the Parent Education Partnership. It was basically a series of elected officials by Bloomberg, paid very highly, that made their decisions long before they got to this supposed democratic forum. And what they did was they allowed people to sort of speak and ask questions, but the decisions they made about education as far as amount of resources, amount of money, how much teachers are going to make the following year, what different classes and types of classes kids are going to have as far as less music, less arts, all was made long before they got to that forum. Well, in October the 5th, 250 parents and students came to that forum, and they occupied it. They mic checked it, and they began making presentations, and they said, basically, this is not what democracy looks like to me. And they won. They overdrew the chancellor, they shouted and drowned them out, and actually caused them to leave, and basically demanded that from that point forward, they were no longer going to be sheep to the democratic theater and status quo that they had been up until that point in time, because they were very aware that their voices really didn't matter, and they weren't going to tolerate it anymore. So I think the moral to this story is it's working, people. It's changing the conversation. It's changing how we look at what we accept for the status quo. So whatever it is that brought you down here, just know that in 10 years you want to look back in history and say, I did it. I impacted this country's history. I changed it. And to me, a big part of that is education. And so, one other quick thing. Just know it's also about bringing this message back to your communities, doing whatever you can to spread the word and the message. A lot of criticism we get is that we're not well organized and that we have a variety of ideas, but I argue that that is our strength. A variety of ideas is what's brought about every social movement to date. When people were out in the streets in the 60s and 70s rallying for change, it wasn't all one concrete message. They had a variety of ideas and ways to do it, but as a result of what they did, I can stand in the same room with any of you, and it's not a crime. So just remember, it starts here. It starts with an idea and a feeling, and we can change history. So.
Next, one of our Be Heard members wrote to Noam Chomsky and discussed what we were doing, and Noam Chomsky wrote him back. So I thought that would be really nice to just read the letter from Noam Chomsky and what he said about the movement, in particular, Occupy Baltimore. Okay, dear John, this is John Lawton, Rachel Lawton's brother. Rachel's here somewhere. Very pleased to learn about what you are doing. The Occupy movements are, in my opinion, a very important, if not spectacular, development. Quite unprecedented in many respects, but these are unprecedented times. And unless current tendencies are soon reversed, what has been a major and shameful turning point in American history for the past 30 years might become an irreversible, self-inflicted decline. Hard for me to exaggerate the importance of the tasks you are undertaking, or my admiration for your efforts and initiatives. Signed, Noam Chomsky. So, there we go. We thought that was kind of cool. Next, I would like to bring up Bess Altwerger. She is a faculty member in the Department of Education Technology and Literacy at Towson University. As a teacher, educator, literacy researcher, and author, Bess has devoted much of her career to exposing the corporate and political agenda driving literacy instruction and assessment. She has been an outspoken critic of federal policies that have resulted in high-stakes testing, one-size-fits-all curriculum mandates, privatization of public schools, and the deprofessionalization of teaching. In 2010, she co-founded Save Our Schools March and National Call to Action, and was co-organizer of a mass rally, march, and conference in D.C. this past July that drew about 10,000 parents, teachers, and students from across the country. Also, her son has been involved in the Occupy movement from the beginning, and she is proud of him. She spoke about that, and that touched me the most, how proud you are of him and what he's doing. So, Bess, will you come up and talk a bit?
Was already mentioned, I am a Towson University education professor, but today I'm here with you as the co-organizer of the Save Our Schools March and National Call to Action. Last July 30th, 10,000 parents, teachers, students, unionists, and everyday people came from all over the nation by bus, march and rally in Washington, D.C. We came to say we want to put the public back in public education. We were there to demand an end to the steady erosion of public education at the hands of the corporations, CEOs, billionaires, and corporate-sponsored foundations that control the politicians that make the education reform policy in this country. This erosion did not just start. It dates back to the 1980s when a quiet but insidious corporate coup occurred in the world of education. The National Business Roundtable, the National Council for Education and the Economy, ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Commission, made up of the most powerful corporations and corporate foundations in the world, decided that they needed to control public schools in order to ensure their place in the 21st century global economy. Through their corporate puppets in Congress and in the White House, they got what they wanted: school reform in the corporate interest. First, No Child Left Behind. Developed not by teachers, not by educators, but education advisors, like knowledgeable educated people like Norman Augustine, the CEO of Northrop Grumman, and state insurance company CEO Ed Rust. These were the education advisors that inflicted standardized, mind-numbing, skill and drill curriculum of NCLB, of a regime of high-stakes testing, and a punitive accountability system that led to thousands of school closures and private management company takeovers. Legislation in many states that allowed our tax dollars to be turned over to charter schools that produce profits but not well-educated children. Research shows that students in charter schools perform the same or worse than those attending our public schools, as poorly funded as they are. They created a media campaign to manufacture a crisis and malign and blame teachers for what is really the failure of this country to eliminate the poverty that inflicts 20% of our school children and impedes their ability to thrive and to learn. And most recently, corporate alliances like ALEC, Achieve, America's Choice are pushing for changes to state laws to try to bust teacher unions, strip teachers of collective bargaining rights, impose a national curriculum. Be careful, it's coming. It's known as the Common Core State Standards, and institute a national testing regime. Oh, so coincidentally, companies like Pearson stand to win multi-million-dollar or billion-dollar contracts for testing and curriculum materials that our teachers and students will be forced to use, whether it's good for them or not. Make no mistake, corporate reformers have no interest in a public school system that will build a strong democracy, produce critical and creative thinkers, people who can question corporate power, and an economic system that is destructive to human welfare and dignity. The corporate reformers want only one thing: to create a school system that will produce the passive, disciplined workforce that will enable them to gain more power and wealth in a competitive global economy. They even call schools workforce development systems. They're not schools, workforce development systems. Corporate reformers are not interested in a public school that would develop young minds, bodies, spirits, through rich student-centered curriculum, culturally responsive curriculum, or quality art, music, and physical education programs. They don't need future workers who can paint, play an instrument, or read and think critically. Their aim is to weaken and ultimately destroy the very foundation of our democratic society, a solid public education system. world system in which there are private schools for the wealthy elite, the children of the 1%, and warehouse our children, the children of the 99%, in a vastly degraded, privatized public system, not for progress, but for profit. The parents, teachers, and students and everyday working people of Save Our Schools are saying, no, we refuse to let this happen. We stand with our brothers and sisters in the Occupy movement and other education activists and groups like National Opt-Out, the Baltimore Algebra Project, and so forth to take back our schools and our country from an economic system that puts greed and profit over the welfare of its people. SOS needs your support in the struggle to achieve these demands. 1, an equitable funding system for all school communities. How can we call ourselves a democracy when we have vast disparities in wealth, not only for the people, but for the schools that ensure the perpetuation of this inequality through funding formulas based on the tax base of local communities? We have schools in wealthy communities with abundant resources, clean, modern, and well-equipped facilities, small class sizes, and then we have schools in poorer communities with few resources, dilapidated and unhealthy buildings, and overcrowded classrooms. Let's take the politicians down to those buildings and ask them, is this what democracy looks like? Hell no. As Jonathan Kozol says, these school funding disparities in our country it amounts to savage inequalities, and it's the shame of our nation. If they want a school system as good as Finland's, let them put the money and resources behind it. Finland has not just equal but equitable funding for all of the schools, and the ones that don't have the highest need, they get extra money. We have 20% child poverty. They have 1% child poverty. They want to fix our system? Let's look over there and see what they're doing for their people. We need an end to high-stakes testing. We need to see high-stakes testing end as a tool to control teaching and learning, that turns classrooms into test prep factories, and that is used in order to close down our neighborhood schools. We need to fight against using test scores to unfairly and unjustly evaluate our students, teachers, and principals. And we need to fight for the right of every parent to opt their child out of testing. Keep them home on testing day. Okay. Finally, we demand that teachers and families have a voice in forming education policy and curriculum. We need to get corporations out of the business of education. We have to tell them that our children and our schools are not for sale. We need to resist the imposition of a national curriculum and national assessments that are created by the corporate interests for the corporate interests. We need to reclaim our classrooms as places where children can learn how to ensure a future of democracy, social justice, economic justice, and a living planet. We, families and educators, know what is best for our children, and it is not what puts more money in their pockets. We will no longer stand silent as they steal the last remaining public institution in this country for their economic gain. Together, Occupy, Save Our Schools, Opt Out, the Baltimore Algebra Project, and all progressive people, we need to stand together and restore our schools to their rightful owners. We, the people.
Thank you, Bess. And can I say this? If you are interested in getting involved with Save Our Schools, there's Bess. There she is. You just heard her speak. I'm sure she would love your help in any capacity possible. If this is something that you find important, and you should, there she is. Okay. We also have other nonprofits here, and we're going to be talking about them a little later on, so that if you are interested in getting involved with them, I will point them out to you and tell you a little bit about what they do. Right now, though, we have another poet. He is an 11-year-old poet, Julian Dixon, and he came here today from the DC area. He's in the 6th grade, and he's almost 12 years old. Right? He was born in Palestine, and he wrote his poem, A Bird's Eye View, for English class, and he would like to read his poem today to express his solidarity with the movement and his hope for a better future. Julian, you want to come up?
Hi. Before I read this, I would like to thank Kim Jensen for inviting me here. A forest of green grass, now a metropolis, soon to be washed away, along with the stars in the sky, by the tornado of black smoke nonchalantly hovering above, as we feast upon dying species and blame sharks for it all. The taxes we pay going into nuclear plants instead of schools. But the few who will not settle for a mediocre planet exceed limits to build this world. Those who brought down Mubarak, those who declare war on Wall Street, those who fight for the freedom of all races, those who bring armies down with words, those who clean off the stains of red, coloring our sea, those who take the great hourglass of time and flip it over to give this world a second chance.
That was great, Julian. Thank you. That was really cool.
Hey, Rachel. Woo-hoo, good.
On to our next speaker. Since 1993, Mark Steiner has hosted the widely acclaimed public radio news and interview program, The Mark Steiner Show, on WJHU. In 2001, when WJHU came up for sale, Steiner led the movement to maintain community ownership of the station, and he played an integral role in founding WYPR. He also founded a theater program in Maryland in the state prison system, as well as Family Circle Theater, which is a company of teenagers that produces original productions about adolescent issues. He served for 10 years on the faculty of Baltimore School for the Arts, and we're really pleased to have him with us today to speak with you and to speak to the movement. Mark Steiner. It's like a maze getting up here. Thank you.
How you all doing? I want to tell you a little short story. I'm not going to talk long, but watching this crowd here, and I visited New York, I've seen Lancaster, Pennsylvania. We're going to Washington, D.C. every night on our show. We've had somebody from Occupy Something around the country in dialogue with other parts of America that are occupying parts of their communities. And it really strikes me, I've been watching this thing go on for over 50 years. By that I mean, when I was 13 years old, I joined my first picket line to integrate the white coffee pot at Bondalman Shopping Center. That was a long time ago. A long time ago. And through all those years, things change. They change slowly sometimes, but they change because people make a push to make them change. Segregation wouldn't have ended unless we went to jail, unless we got our heads beaten open, unless we packed the prisons. That's how we ended segregation. It wasn't out of the goodness of their hearts that they changed and stopped that. The war in Vietnam, environmental consciousness, women's movement, all those things have changed America fundamentally. But something else is going on right now, I think, that you all are responding to is fundamentally different than all those things that we did 50 years ago, 40 years ago. Because the system this country and the world built from the 1930s to the 1960s to take care of our citizens, to take care of us, is falling apart. They don't have the answers anymore. They're not willing to let go of their profits for the people anymore. So this 99%, when that movement started in New York, when they took over the park, that struck a chord with America. and a deep chord. One of the things that struck me when I was in New York was at 5 or 6 o'clock when people got out of work, people in all styles of working clothes showed up to stand with the young people in that park. Workers, office workers, men, women, Latino, black, white, Asian, they were all there. That next morning, when they thought they were going to push them out of Zakata Park, over 500, I'm not good at numbers, but there's at least 500 men and women, Teamsters and truck drivers and transit workers marched to surround that park to stand with the people in that park. So something fundamentally is happening very different here. What's different now is that it's not just an isolated movement. This is affecting people's lives, their hearts, their minds, where they live, where they work, if they can find work. So what you're doing here is very powerful. And you can watch what's happening here. The mayor's office here has cut off your electricity, wants you out of here, but I think there are also, like in other cities, where they haven't used like police brutality to push people out of the parks and go after them. They're a little nervous about doing that here. So whatever happens, stand your ground. Stand your ground. Don't be afraid to stand your ground. The beauty of what you're doing here, that we didn't do so well sometimes in the late 60s, when we ran amok through the streets, was adopting and following and believing in nonviolent resistance. There's a power in nonviolent resistance that is more powerful than any stone you can throw. You can throw a stone and break that bank window, and they'll just repair the window. But if you stand up in moral witness and refuse to be moved, that sends a message they don't know how to deal with. They can't address. The civil rights movement won because of nonviolence. And I see it happening here. I was talking to people the other day in Israel and Palestine. They're moving towards a powerful nonviolent movement on the West Bank and in Israel. That'll change the entire equation when that happens. It'll change the entire equation here in America when we stand up nonviolently and resist and say enough is enough. America has to be taken back by the people of our country, by all of you, and that's what you're doing. And to see all of you out here, I mean, in your 20s, standing up, this generation of Americans, what you represent, is a sea change in our society. It's powerful to watch. And I tell you, you asked me to talk about the media a bit. I don't know what to say about the media. The media is going to do what they want to do. They're going to cover you the way they want to cover you, and they're going to half cover you, or they won't cover you at all. People like us and Amy Goodman and other programs, that'll bring you on every day to have that voice heard. And that's what we'll do. Not a day will go by that an Occupy voice will not be heard on the Mark Steiner Show. Plan to travel to D.C., to see Occupy D.C. and watch what they're doing, bring that story home, go back to New York, go up to Lancaster, go everywhere we can to bring those stories back and to bring those people into conversations. And I think let me suggest one other thing. There's another idea for Occupy. And it came up on our show. And we were thinking about how do you occupy Baltimore? Well, if you notice, they're closing down rec centers in Baltimore, right? And we have how many empty houses in this town? 40,000 empty homes, right? Supposing we occupied a rec center. Supposing we occupied empty houses. And took those houses and made for people to live in. Homeless people, poor working people have skills as plumbers, carpenters, electricians. They can do those houses themselves. And we can take those houses back. 50, whatever year that was, a long time ago, when we had a tenant union group that was in South Baltimore, when it was still a poor, working-class neighborhood. And they would evict people from their homes. We would take all the belongings, put them back in the house, change the locks, and then deliver boxes of rats and roaches that we collected from those homes and left them on the doorstep of the landlord. I only say that because things had to fundamentally shift here and move. Occupying Baltimore, occupying New York is really important. It has to move to another level at some point. Because it continues. It can't stay where it is, but it will. And you're going to define it. How? Who knows? But we'll see. And so I will make another commitment to you that if it's imminent that the police come to move you out, we will be here with you and with our cameras and with our microphones, and we'll tell the story, and we'll be here too. So I just want to end with just keep on keeping on. The struggle is just beginning. You're going to change America fundamentally. This is just the very beginning. Stay where you are. Do not move.
Thank you, Mark Steiner. I just got a little breaking announcement that I didn't realize had happened because we were preparing to come down here. The Occupy Baltimore movement effectively shut down our local Bank of America branch. So that's pretty awesome. I guess they had to put up a sign that says, you know, having technical difficulties, we'll get back to you. So, yeah, good job. Great. Okay, moving forward, our next speaker. Kevin Zeese. Kevin Zeese has been involved in Occupy DC pretty much from the get-go, and we're really happy to have him come here and speak to Occupy Baltimore, and maybe he can speak a little bit for what has been going on in Occupy DC. I'd like to welcome Kevin Zeese. We're really happy to have you here. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you very much. This is my first weekend back in Baltimore, so it's great. I had an Occupy addiction. I came here on Friday night, and I come here today, so I keep my fix happening. I've been sleeping in a tent on Freedom Plaza since October 6th, and it's been a great experience. I'll tell you, this Occupy movement is only less than 2 months old, and look at the impact we're already having. It's quite incredible. Bank of America backed down on increasing their charges. We're seeing the Obama administration now talking more about transitioning out of Afghanistan to a training role. We're seeing the polls are just dramatically changing. The shift in the debate has been obvious from before the Occupies began to now. No longer about deficits, now about starting the economy, start about the unfairness in the economic system. In fact, there was a poll 2 days ago. For the first time since the 1930s, a majority of Americans believe the wealth divide is unfair. The first time. I think that's because of us. We are making our voices heard. And that's what I've learned about occupying public space. Occupying public space does not just mean we're in a public space. It means we are occupying part of the political dialogue. People who didn't have a voice before are now getting a voice. They're getting their political voice, which is a fantastic thing. People who have a political voice have to respond to our voice. They have to respond to our issues, our concerns. They have to respond to the wealth divide. We've expanded the debate. And so we've already had a major impact. And I think we're now in our very early ages. We're kind of in our terrible toddler years. And I can tell you already we're all talking in the Occupy movement. The people have been involved in this in webinars, and I had a conference call with 125 occupiers last week. I had some Occupy Wall Street people visiting us this week. We're talking about next steps, and it's going to get exciting. If they think the terrible toddler years are scary, wait till they see the out-of-control teenage years, because we are going to be really bringing some fear to the elites. There's talk about all the occupies working together toward a major occupation in Washington, D.C. next spring, beginning on the first day of spring, for an American spring, for an American awakening. We're talking about tens of thousands of occupiers coming and camping out for multiple weeks to send a message to Washington, D.C., something that has not been seen since the bonus march of 1932. It's going to be an amazing political movement that's just getting going, and everyone here is part of it. When we started talking about this way back in March and April, went public in June, and the first thing we put out was an article that said, "History is knocking. Will you answer the call?" Americans are answering the call. It's really a shock for us. We thought when we started on October 6th, we'd be the first ones getting started, but Occupy Wall Street started on September 17th, and by the time we started, there was actually a movement. In fact, there was already another occupation in Washington, D.C., so we have two occupations in Washington, D.C., one on McPherson Square, one on Freedom Plaza. We do coordinate activities together. We, in fact, are both publishing newspapers. We published our first edition last week of the Occupied Washington Post. You can see it online at occupywashingtondc.org. And the folks at McPherson are about to publish the Occupied Washington Times. So we're going to have two newspapers for the Occupy movement, and we have in both newspapers a joint editorial from the editors of the Occupied Washington Times and the Occupied Washington Post saying this is synergy, not competition. We are working together. In fact, the national movement is called Occupy Together. Now, you know, the media has a hard time understanding our demands. I find that confusing, but when I think about the media, I'm less confused, because the problem that we have in the media is the problem we have in our culture. Concentrated corporate power. That is the issue we are confronting on every agenda item we face. In the media, it means six corporations owning the news media on TV. That's concentrated corporate power. So then when we say that our one demand is end corporate rule and shift power to the people, they can't understand it because they are corporate rule. They don't want to understand it. But our one demand of end corporate rule, shift power to the people, affects every issue. So you can't just say we have one demand. We have demands on healthcare. We have demands on energy. We have demands on jobs. We have demands on the environment. We have demands on wars and military spending. The military-industrial complex, the corporatism of America, has entangled itself in every part of our lives, and our job as occupiers is to begin to untangle that knot. And we're just getting started to do that. Now, I'm going to finish with this. When we started our occupation of Washington, D.C. on Freedom Plaza, we had a name for it. It was Stop the Machine, Create a New World. It was two parts. The Stop the Machine is like what you all did this morning at that Bank of America in Fells Point, where they get to the bank and they say, due to circumstances beyond our control, we had to close the bank today. Yes, these circumstances are beyond their control, and that's what Stop the Machine is about. We've closed banks 5 or 6 times in Washington, D.C. We've closed the Chamber of Commerce. We did an action in the U.S. Senate where, for the first time in the years of doing this, every senator locked their door. They were so afraid of the Occupy when they locked their doors. So we actually closed every Senate office with one protest. We protested in the House Armed Services Committee. We are stopping the machine. That's part of it. But perhaps the more important part is creating the new world. We have to work to create the democratized economy that we want to see, because that is how we opt out of the crony capitalist economy, the corrupt crony capitalist economy. We do that by building our own economy, by developing cooperatives, by developing worker-owned cooperatives, consumer-owned cooperatives, shifting to community banks, where we can tell the bank where we want to see money go in our community, so the money doesn't go to Wall Street, but stays in Baltimore, and is invested in Baltimore to build Baltimore. We need to make that reality our own. We need to create our own money system. We see Baltimore B-notes is starting. Bravo to B-notes. We want to see more B-notes. We want to see a loan bank where people put time in and get people to give them time in return. We can create our own economy, and we can therefore not cooperate with the currently corrupt crony capitalist economy. You know, when Gandhi was asked by the British, what do you expect, we're just going to leave? His response was, yes. When hundreds of millions of Indians refuse to cooperate and resist your actions, you will see it's in your interest to leave. That's the message to the 1%. They should listen now, because we are getting bigger, we are getting stronger, and we are going to make sure that they are removed from power and that the people rule this country. The battle is participatory democracy versus concentrated wealth, and the 99% will win. Thank you all very much.
All right, thank you, Kevin Cease. It's great. Okay, I think we're getting ready a little closer to a little bit of action. So we're going to have a final speaker. I'm going to tell you about some actions you can take with some local groups here, and then we're going to do a little physical action today. We're going to take all of us, because we have a nice number of people here right now, and we are going to, after our poet and after our final poet speaker, we are going to march to City Hall, and we're going to deliver them our demand that they support Occupy Baltimore and don't threaten Baltimore. So please get ready, start stretching your toes. I'd say in about 20 minutes, that's what we're going to be doing. I just wanted to give you one little not fun fact. One not fun fact is none of the people who are part of the major banks responsible for crashing our economy, none of those CEOs have been prosecuted. That is a not fun fact. Well, at the same time, people across the country are getting arrested in the Occupy movement. And that is something that I think we were also here saying, down twinkles to that. Thank you, Kim. All right, our next poet, actually, it was the winner of the International Slam Poetry Contest in 2011. He's going to come up here. His name is Chris August, and we welcome him to our podium. Chris? There you are. Okay. I was just hoping you'd pop out. Okay.
Occupy Baltimore, how are you doing? Thank you so much for being here and for doing this and letting me be a part of it and reminding the nation and the world that Baltimore is among the many cities that is aware and active and doing things. I'm a special educator. I work at a private special needs high school. So yeah, thank you all the teachers who are here. I'm so excited about that. That's what we desperately need. I work for a private special needs high school who by law is not required to follow No Child Left Behind and chooses to anyway. So what I get to see is what I wish people who made laws that affect my students see, which is the devastation incumbent upon a life that is completely deprived of the services and the attention that it desperately needs. And so to that end, the piece I'm going to do today is the human side of education and of these decisions that so frequently get made by folks who are not qualified to make them. This is my teacher poem. Day 1 of James's standardized assessments finds us in the room that my students have nicknamed the testing closet. In its close confines, I can smell that James hasn't bathed in at least 4 days, and I can see the distinctly unmedicated darting of his eyes. I am not expected to include any of this in the report that I will write for James's last education plan. For that, I am to focus on how James responds to writing prompts, like the one with the picture of the boy with 2 robots. Students are to compare the robots using the word however. Nobody ever uses however correctly. When he sees the picture, James asks me, Mr. August, can we name him and crap? I am tempted to include this in the report alongside the discordant symphony created by James's rumbling stomach and muttering mouth because nobody at the shelter where he's been staying is required to feed him or administer his schizophrenia meds. When I ask him if he needs a break, he tells me, no, I think I got this. I don't know how to teach the mechanical resolve that compels a barely literate young man to spend hours in a tiny room just days after the cops pulled him from his new foster placement, because something in the stability there must have flared up those old tendencies, and he's been stealing again, been peeing on floors and mattresses again. Day 2 finds me without James. Day 3 finds James just 12 hours after being released from the hospital because the guys at the shelter don't see the unmedicated schizophrenic. They don't see the 21-year-old high school student who won't even get a diploma. They just see the punk who stole their shoes. And from across the testing closet table, y'all, I can distinctly make out the 3-inch unstitched gash in his scalp from where they dragged James into the street by a fistful of his tracks. It is gaping like the most cynical of mouths, issuing a reminder that black and retarded are the only 2 strikes you need to be out in this world that I am supposed to be preparing him for, but I won't include any of that in the report either. I will write that James has given the only response to the robot prompt in 7 years that has made me cry. He wrote, the boy has 2 robots. However, he loves them both. who taught James love. Not the birth mother who could never choose the miracle in her stomach or the boy in her arms over the hell she let march through her veins into a death. And if I'm being honest, it wasn't me either. Because despite the close confines he occupies in my heart, the rest of me is bound to a system that just wants a report, and I will write it with a prayer, because sometimes a prayer is the closest thing a teacher has to control. I will write it desperate to believe that something in my time with James has built a shield for him, that for all of my students I am balm to bruised skin, a lullaby, sung inside beaten hearts. I will write it, stealing James's own line. It will read, in 7 years I have taught over 100 students. However, I love them all. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, teachers, activists, everyone. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Chris August. That was very cool. That was really great. Okay, before we move on to our final poet and our march, I want to just let you know when we come back from the march, I encourage you to get involved. Either get involved and be heard, okay? I gave our little plug, Baltimore Higher Education Alliance for Real Democracy. We meet here every Sunday, 6 p.m. If you are interested, our mission is to support Occupy Baltimore. Our mission is to have living wages for all people, to take the war economy and put it towards schools, put it towards infrastructure, put it towards health care, and to get, as Kevin Z said, the bottom line is we got to get corporate money out of our democracy because it threatens our democracy. It has essentially killed our democracy, and we need to take our democracy back, and that is part of Be Heard's mission. I just want, if you're part of a community organization, to raise your hand. I have Casa de Maryland is here represented. Raise your hand. Okay, right here. Casa de Maryland. Okay, they built a more just society by improving the quality of life for low-income immigrant communities. They also are defending the Maryland Dream Act to allow immigrant students to be able to access an education. Very much part of what we're concerned with. They also work on prohibiting racial profiling that is at the backbone of these current immigration laws. So Casa de Maryland, right over there if you want to help out with that. I showed you Bess for Save Our Schools. Also, Morna. Where's Morna for United Opt-Out? Morna. United Opt-Out, as Bess spoke to, is to get rid of high-stakes testing, because this is just another leg of head of the corporate interest, these high-stakes testing. So if you're interested in working with Opt-Out, the Opt-Out program, please see Morna. There she is over there in the orange sweater. Do we have anyone here from Good Jobs, Better Baltimore? Good Jobs? Well, they're a fine organization anyway, and you can still find them. And of course, they're working to revive the American dream. And basically, Good Jobs, Better Baltimore, it's essentially a well-titled organization because the title tells you exactly what they do. Okay, and finally, do we have any representation from the different committees for Occupy Baltimore? Is there anyone from the outreach committee here for Occupy Baltimore? Occupy Baltimore has several committees you can work on. Outreach, media, membership, food, action,
arts and culture.
Arts and culture. Are you a member of the arts and culture? Here we go. The arts and culture of Occupy Baltimore. Go ahead. Finance. There you go. Finance.
Waste.
Where's safety? Community safety. Are you on the community safety? Back here, community safety. Facilitation. And facilitations. Legal over here. They have a fine. Well, the media likes to portray the occupations as being disorganized. Within days, they had these committees together. They had tents up. They were providing meals. They were doing community outreach. They were having teach-ins. They were providing free education. And most importantly, they're providing a space where people can get together and discuss these issues and to see what they're going to do about these. So I applaud Occupy Baltimore and everything that they're doing down here, and I encourage you to get involved. Okay, now for our last speaker poet, and she is actually going to lead us into our march. So So she's going to lead us right into the march to City Hall. Please, please join us. Let's make this big. Let's make this exciting. Nancy Murray. Little bio on Nancy Murray. She's a good friend of mine, but she also had, like a lot of people in the U.S., had lost her job and she was having trouble making her mortgage payments. Her house had depreciated since she bought it, so she had to do a short sale, and the bank refused to accept any loss and insisted that Nancy, a single woman losing her home and struggling to get educated and find work, take on a personal loan to pay off the depreciation, which was in the amount of $40K. So the bank had wanted her to pay the depreciated amount, and when she refused, Wells Fargo canceled the sale and attempted to garnish her part-time wages. At the same time, as we know, yeah, boo, twinkled down. At the same time, we know that their CEOs were making millions of dollars in bonuses. And for 2 years now, her house, a lovely little house in Hampton, which might have been purchased by a lovely little family and made the neighborhood better, what's it been doing? Sitting vacant, deteriorating, and the neighborhood is suffering from it. Nancy is here because this financial bottom line thinking of corporate banks at the expense of individuals and communities is eroding this country and has to stop. Nancy Murray.
She said my name is Nancy Murray, and I am one person. I hated that my government's priorities didn't line up with my own. I hated that we were spending billions on war while our schools were falling apart and our infrastructures were deteriorating. I hated that children were indeed being left behind, being left to fend for themselves until they behaved badly, at which time they were jailed. I hated it, but what could I do? I'm only one person, and nobody was going to listen to me. But then I joined a group called Be Heard, the Baltimore Higher Education Alliance for Real Democracy. Be Heard is a part of a group called Occupy Baltimore. Occupy Baltimore is a part of a group called Occupy Wall Street. Occupy Wall Street is a part of a group called the 99%, and that's you. And that's all of us. And together we are making the world pay attention. Together we are running toward something, and the more people that we can get to join us, the better our chances will be that we'll get there quicker. And that's where you all come in. Now, a couple of people have mentioned that critics say that our message is confusing. That's because our particular jigsaw puzzle has a million different pieces to it. But there are 310 million people in this country, and if each person commits to work on just one of the puzzle pieces, we will get there together. We will redirect the funds of this nation away from war and toward education and infrastructure. We will make it possible for the underprivileged to rise up in the morning with dignity. We will see to it that rich people who commit crimes of greed against unsuspecting individuals will be held accountable in the same way that a poor man is punished for his crimes of desperation. We will. In this crowd today, as Julie said, there are representatives from several local organizations for social justice. After this rally, we're going to march to City Hall, where we're going to deliver our petition for demanding the First Amendment right be supported here in Baltimore. If you have not signed that letter, please see me while we're marching and get your signature on it. I want you all to not just rally for the fun of it today. I want you, not that any of you are, I want you to commit to taking on a piece, one piece of the puzzle. You know, if you're new to the rally, if you're new to the Occupy movement, if you're a student just coming in and if you're confused about what to do and where to start, it's okay. If you don't understand all the nuances of world economics, it's okay. I want you to move towards what you do understand. I want you to learn as you go, and I want you to find the people who are already working on your particular interesting part of the puzzle, and I want you to join them. Join them today. They need you, we need you, and now is the time. Last night, a thought occurred to me as I watched the evening news, and I had the chance to think and see that the problems facing our great nation are the same ones bearing down on me. It's the same shell game. The under-earning, overspending, never-ending cycle of debt and fear. It's being unprotected when danger hovers near. It's the same guilt-inducing shame, the overcompensating and the spin of hope and hating that I deal with every day that's crippling this country. You see, I am the USA. I am the 99%. The states united, independent together and falling apart. And I'm here to represent, to shout out, to expose myself with pride. Because no matter how hard I tried, I ran away again and again. There was no time for running toward. I had my hands forever clenched. How could I reach for yours? I built my house of cards, then I watched it burn and I watched it fall. We're not kings and queens. We're deuces, all expecting more. We're jokers, juggling too many balls. Can you see them falling to the floor? I was the traumatized child in the cold, dark night. I was the unwed mother and the one who fled because she couldn't get it right. I was the pregnant teen, dropped out of school, dropped out of hope, dropped out of dreams. I was the unemployed with no down payment on a life for my kids. And I was those terrible things I did. When darkness told my heart to fear and sadness told me not to care. It's true. It is true. But now I am these things I do. I stand with all my hope in hand, and I commit to follow through. Until I and this great nation do what we have the power to do. I take responsibility. But Uncle Sam, I promise you will too. And as for everybody else just trying to muddle through, the 99%, it's you we're here to represent. And I offer you my broken heart, red, white, and blue, independent, together, and falling apart. And I'm asking a question. Who are you? Phil's going to put the camera down and pick the guitar up. We're done. All right, so who are you? Who are you? You're the 99%. Who are you? 99%. Who are you? 99%. Who am I? 99%. Who are you? 99%. You know what we're about to do? We're about to deliver a letter to City Hall to let her know we're here. Let them know we're staying here, and let them know we will be heard. Anybody with an instrument, anybody with any kind of instrument that wants to join us, we're marching up to Gay, we're turning right, turning left, and then we're going up to City Hall.
We are the 99%! We are the 99%! We are the 99%! We are the 99%! We are 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 the 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 99%! 99%. We are the 99%. We are the 99%.
Money for housing, not for war. Money for jobs, not for war. Money for jobs, not for war. Money for schools, not for war. Money for schools, not for war. Money for schools.
What democracy looks like. Tell me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Trickle down is a lie. We say occupy. We never seem to hear our cry. We say occupy.
Inflation wrote in Mickey Mouse as a sign of.
Democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Tell me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like.
Oh shit.
This is what democracy looks like.
Are you okay?
You're okay.
We can break them if we try. We say occupy. Trickle down is a lie. We say occupy. Profits are up through the sky. We say occupy. They never seem to hear our cry. We say occupy. We can break them if we try. We say occupy.
Don't block her. They come through here.
Nancy, great scene.
Thank you. That was awesome. Thank you.
Whose streets?
Our streets. Who's sitting?
Our city. Our city. Who's sitting? Our city. Who's sitting? Our city. Who's sitting? Our city. crosswalk. This is what democracy looks like. What does democracy look like?
This is what democracy looks like.
What does democracy look like?
This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like.
Of the people here that occupy Baltimore. Do we have a... Oh, you want to do bikers? All right, we'll do that.
Mic check!
Mic check! Okay, we know that City Hall is closed.
City Hall is closed.
We are here in spirit symbolically.
We
have the power of the written word. And I'm assuming everybody signed. If not, you're gonna see me before we leave. Right? Okay. This word I'm gonna read to you. Before we disperse this afternoon. Dear Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake. And the Baltimore City Council. You are receiving this letter. On behalf of the Baltimore Higher Education Alliance. That's too much. Alliance for Real Democracy. A group be heard. A group that is affiliated. With the Occupy Baltimore movement. We are a group of progressives. Faculty, students, staff, and administrators. Represent many higher educational institutions.
massive social change.
And strengthening connections. Between higher education. And Occupy Baltimore. We are writing to request. Your support. For the Occupy Baltimore movement. Occupy Baltimore has stated. Through the transformation of this public space. Occupy Baltimore is expressing solidarity. With other Occupy movements throughout the nation. And in the world. Who are forcing attention. To the issues. Of political and economic injustice. This movement is committed. To nonviolence. And is exercising. Its constitutional right. To assemble peacefully. As guaranteed by the First Amendment. In order for you to support. Occupy Baltimore. We ask you to provide. Four very specific assurances. There will be no violence. There will be no arrests. Of those peacefully occupying McKeldin Square. Occupy Baltimore will not be evicted. And power will be restored. If you support this movement, you must guarantee these four basic requests. Furthermore, Occupy Baltimore wishes to collaborate with the City Council to ensure that there are no safety or fire hazards present at McKeldin Square. Because of the many economic disparities present within the population of Baltimore. The city desperately needs this movement. And this movement needs your support. Please do not deny basic civil liberties or stifle hope in our democracy for those trying to make a difference and improve the lives of the 99% in Baltimore and beyond. You have the ability to ensure that Occupy Baltimore can continue to assemble peacefully by guaranteeing that there will be no violence, no arrests, and no eviction, and that power will be restored. As an affinity group and a source of support for Occupy Baltimore, the concerns of Be Heard include improving public education, healthcare, housing, and providing living wages. voices to be heard.
And we expect our voices to be heard.
It is important. That you, as the mayor, and the city council, recognize that Occupy Baltimore, is a positive movement, to be taken seriously. You can musicians, go ahead and
Being a part of this process has really taught me a lot. My mind is opened a lot. I don't have any more judgments. This has really comes to an understanding about how people can come together throughout a time of need and press an issue that needs to be paid attention to. So I really respect the people that was down there. I'm so happy to be a part of that process. Just seeing the people marching just give me flashbacks of when people was marching for slavery and the civil rights movement. Just being able to say I was a part of that was really an honor for me. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and keep hope alive. Don't ever stay in your ground. If anybody ever tries to move you, stay in your ground. There's a non-violent way. Because anybody, if you throw a rock at a window and it breaks the window, they can easily fix the window. But if you stand outside a building and don't move, they can't do anything. But they don't know how to respond to that. So all the injustices in this country, just one by one, they're going to start crippling on because of this movement. And I'm really proud to be able to say I was a part of it. So thank you guys for watching, and continue to keep faith alive. LOVE, love.